Hey y'all, it's Shannon with the What She Said project. Ooh, today is a spicy one because we're launching a fleet of courses starting with Melanie McGehee. And today we're going to hear all about this new powerful essay writing course and more about Melanie's path to speaking and writing her truth. Here we are by magic, joined by Melanie McGehee, writer, educator extraordinaire, and my friend. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Shannon. I'm glad that you put friend last
Well, that's the truth.
because I think it's important. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what we've become. Doesn't always
Yes.
happen when you hire someone to be your creative coach.
I guess also, and your creative coach, really, we began a journey through, we first met at a What She Said project story slam,
We
correct?
did. We did.
Do you remember which one it was?
I can't remember, but you were playing a flute and stuff in the art museum, and I thought that was really, I was not sure if I was impressed or not.
Good, because my it was a recorder and my playing was not impressive,
Yeah,
but it
well,
was
yeah,
funny.
you it was funny. You put yourself out there. And that's strange. I do think it was the theme was camp,
It was
stories
camp.
about camp. And
Mhm.
actually I had I had volunteered. I wanted to do that story slam. And man, did I go way over the time limit.
You know what I think it was? Okay, so for y'all that are like late in joining the story, the What She Said project, which now Melanie is a part of, we're so thrilled. Literally, I have been thinking about asking how to collaborate with Melanie and a few other folks that sort of followed our 10-year journey. Next year it's 10 years, 2025, of the What She Said project. We've done lots of things, but we started in an oral storytelling tradition that is like moth style story slams, 5 to 7 minutes, true stories, has to have happened to you. It has some like parameters. And so I'm the one who brought this storytelling style to where I live and was lucky to partner with people like the Columbia Museum of Art and others to have like a fun evening and sometimes a pretty deep evening of personal stories.
Yeah.
Melanie joined.
I had one person come up after me that lives in Columbia who actually had worked at the same church camp, and we had been there at least one summer together. That and so that was fun.
Those evenings are always magical. I'm so glad we met that way because now, years later, I don't remember what year that was, like maybe 2019, it's before COVID, 2018 or 2019. And then all of a sudden, you personally had this decision you needed to make, this question you had about your future. And that's how I got to work with you as a coach, which probably is a story for another day, but it is in its culmination. So, zoom forward to 2024. You now have what degree?
I have a master's degree in creative nonfiction
Mhm.
that I got through Wilkes University, which is in Pennsylvania, and it's a low residency program.
Perfect. You're finishing up another degree.
My MFA.
So
It's
excited.
so funny because I went there because I realized that I was not going to finish the story I wanted to tell on my own.
Mhm.
That I don't think that writers, I say they are not made in isolation.
Mhm.
And I had gone to a writing retreat that you suggested that I research and then attend. And it was there that I met a mentor that I wanted to follow along. So I went to get this graduate degree mostly to write my story. But then when I was there, I decided I wanted to stay for the next couple semesters because I didn't just want to write my story. I wanted to help other people write their own stories.
And here we are. In this iteration of us, Melanie has lovingly agreed to come on to the What She Said project in a collaborator way, which literally we're thrilled about. We cannot wait for this first iteration, which is a writing course. Doesn't that make complete sense? A creative. Can you tell me, for folks that don't know all these words, we know them now because both of us are memoirists through essay. Fascinating that. We didn't say that 7 years ago, but it's so exciting. Tell me about what creative nonfiction is. What does that mean to folks who don't know?
I think the term might have been thrown out first in the early 90s. And yeah, but I think back to how journalism started to change and become more interesting. I think, was it In Cold Blood, Truman Capote maybe? Like,
Yeah.
wrote the story. And so creative nonfiction is telling true stories, but weaving in them the great elements of storytelling that's found in fiction and sometimes even in poetry.
Woo!
Yeah, so it's fun.
It's wonderful. And I love that this is the lane that you're in because if you're listening or you know the What She Said project work, it's absolutely aligned. So in our growth, both like my personal and in like our people like Melanie, we have gone from page to stage. And so a part of what we want to do is have possibilities for folks to get that skill, the skills, the community, the support from aligned individuals. And Melanie, honestly, okay, I should tell everybody this. Melanie is, if ever I am not able to read my own work, Melanie is my perfect reader. Like that's how aligned Melanie is. Like I know we're pretty Southern around here. We're also people that are mission aligned and we're learning people. We learn through stories, um, kindness, like there's some political alignment, which we can say because we're not a 501c3. But Melanie is like literally I could not think of a better person to begin teaching these stories. So we've got a class coming up and the podcast is actually so that you have time, you that are considering this sort of thing, to check out Melanie, check out the What She Said project, and then like hear more about these words that we're using, like the word essay. Can we go in there with your help and explanation, Melanie? Where do we begin?
Yeah, after we put that out there, I
Mhm.
thought it may read a little more technical
Yeah,
than I feel like you and I are.
yeah.
Um,
Essay. Let's start there.
yeah, essay. I think that folks may hear the word essay and think that it's technical, as in like researched and statistics. They may think about school where they're having to do research
Mm,
essays. And so this isn't research. This this podcast, this class, this workshop, it's going to be on Zoom. I don't know why I said podcast. It it's going to be personal essays, which are really, really popular now. I would say that thinking back maybe to the 80s, Joan Didion um, really used personal essays when she wrote her books. Some books that I read a semester, 2 semesters ago were actually collections of essays. Um, but there are lots. What is modern love in the New York Times, I think, is something that people throw around. And that's a personal essay.
yeah,
It's it you just take a little nugget of something,
yeah.
maybe describe it like a story. And then
Mhm,
I think for it to be an essay, you need to give it a little, you need to expound on the meaning.
mm,
Whether you detail what that experience has come to mean for you,
mhm,
or whether you lead the reader enough to make their own decisions about it, if that makes sense. There are lots of places out there publishing personal essays,
mhm.
and they can be as short as 3 to 500 words.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, but I mean, my little, my perfect, I think, length for things that I like to write is 1,000 to 1,500 words.
Hmm.
It kind of, I feel like it's my sweet spot.
Yeah.
And I've definitely in class learned how to expound to 3 to 5,000 words. But I am in the process of rewriting my memoir that was told as a story into essays because my editor thought that, well, she said I was an essayist and that what she saw in my story was multiple themes of
Hmm.
life. And so that's a challenge for me that I'm working on now. And it's fun to do challenges with other people. But yeah,
A
a
thousand percent.
personal story. You could call it a personal story.
Agreed. And there's so many applications, like even if it's just for you, the writer, I think both of us have this background in enjoying, we talked about this before we started recording. We both enjoyed writing for like just to figure out our own stories. Both of us did. And now both of us have almost finished drafts of memoirs. I thought mine was a book of essays. My editor at the University Press is like, gave me astute feedback because it's a medical memoir, that it would be what better received or have like a full message if I did do the braided essay, which is like
Mhm.
I had to go back in and learn how to cite things. I had the research, I just didn't have them in the anyway. So that's like, how did y'all write your books? I think we did a lot of it in these sort of workshop things. Do you know?
Yeah, we did a lot of essays and put them together. The
Yes.
transitions.
Yes. And then in that practice, it really taught us a lot about ourselves, which, like we were talking about earlier, both of us um, have had writing as a tool for like mental health, for like understanding things that we have been through. Both of us have used it in like we're not therapists in non-clinical ways, but there are a lot of these narrative tools, these writing your own stories with community that can be so therapeutic and helpful.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think that narrative medicine is something that's like really taken off in the last 20 years? It's because um, someone discovered or rediscovered, I don't think that anything is really new,
Mhm.
um, but the healthcare professionals can can give better care and treatment if they understand the patient's story.
Yep.
And then they went from that to, you know, people in healthcare can be better caregivers if they know their own story. And
Yep.
so I feel like it's this back and forth, this like giver and receiver
Mm.
that we're doing both of those. And yeah, I know that the understanding of story or narratives brings empathy within communities. And I think that we're missing a lot of empathy and connection these days.
Agreed. This course that you are doing with the What She Said project it's on Zoom.
Mm.
It has 4 sessions. So when you think about like as the educator, as the instructor, the facilitator, what kind of, as the kids would say, what kind of vibes does this program, this 4 session program have?
I think it's going to be a sampling
Ooh.
of things that I found effective when I went to a professional graduate program. And it's not going to be intimidating, but I'm planning for the first one to be a little sampling of what is an essay and what kind of essays are there. And I want us to get to know each other. I'm going to start each session off with what I think will be a fun prompt that will lead into some discussion. I'm going to practice up on Canva to have a few outlines to show. We will read at least one sample essay. each Monday and pick out what we think is really great about it. And my hope is that we are going to feel safe enough that when we have maybe a 10 to 15-minute free write about the technique that we've just talked about, that we'll be willing to dare to share. Um, yeah, and I really like in school, I've really like been exposed to different kind of workshop models.
Mhm.
And I remember my first semester when we would have to give edit suggestions to folks in our cohort. I feel like I obliterated a few people, and it was I learned how to hold back because what I found myself doing was line editing.
Mm.
And, when someone writes a first draft or just a stream of consciousness, let me in the very beginning start writing this down. It is in no way ready for line edits at
Right.
all. It's not ready even for criticism. So, what it's ready for is for someone to say, I really heard you when I read that. That's what spoke to me. Or to say, that's what I want to hear more about. And so I expect our class, because you're going to be there, um, to introduce you to something that you might have never considered, to prompt you in a way to write down something that you don't realize is going to relate to your big story, but it is. It's going to be a lot of everydayness
Mm.
when I've thought about my prompts. And then when we share, I think we're gonna laugh a lot, and I think that we're gonna make that face you just made with our eyes open a lot, because I think we're gonna get to know a stranger. It's gonna be a small group, but, I think strangers are gonna surprise us with what they share, but I think that each of us and I'm gonna be doing it too, each of us is gonna surprise ourselves with what we come out with. And it's an incredible delight. When you take 3 minutes and then you look back and like, yeah, I wish I would have thought about that before or said that. And we're gonna talk. Do you want me to say the second one, we're gonna talk about imagery, how to create a scene that the reader can really live in.
Mm.
And
That is for folks who, and I want to hear more about that, but for folks who are telling a story, like for me, I had to go back in and I was great at dialogue,
mm,
but I wasn't as good at setting the scene. So because of having an MFA in theater, I could drop you into it. Like I could have these, I knew inciting incidents and I knew turning points and I knew these things of storytelling. But I think what I learned is my audience needed a little bit more setting the scene, a little bit more description. And
yeah.
when describing real people, I know it's coming through my filter. I know. So I love that you're bringing in very soon imagery.
Yeah, as much as we want to have a welcoming atmosphere,
Mhm.
if we're hosting a party or
Mhm.
hosting a workshop on Zoom, I'm convinced that you need to set a welcoming sentence, for your reader. Welcome them in and quickly, you know,
Mhm.
quickly but not jarringly.
Mhm.
And it depends on what kind of story you're telling, you
Mhm.
know? Like, are you gonna tell a story that kind of meanders a little bit? Or are you gonna tell a story that's very like has lots of action in it and stuff? So by the fourth session, we're gonna talk about tone. And, I'm hoping by the third and fourth weeks that each participant has decided this is the essay I want to work on about this topic or event. And so we can delve further into the fourth one will be, does my structure really match the tone that I'm looking for? And do I need to add dialogue in?
Or in
If
my case,
take
what,
it out.
right?
The third one, we're going to talk about transitions. And I discovered how important transitions were,
Mhm.
um, and how transitions can be one simple word.
Mhm.
They can be white space, you know, since this is writing. Um, but you need to really be careful with your transitions to be sure that the reader stays with you in time and space. Now, I feel like I am really growing about this whole space thing. I'm learning to move my body like physically. My Pilates instructor would say that. Um, and that it's helping me in the same way in my writing. I'm not sure that I always describe movements well enough. How do I get from this place to another? But I think that I have really grown in showing you how to move from the present back to the past, to think about the future. And in memoir, you have to do that really well, sometimes succinctly, but we're always telling about something that's already happened. But we're doing it often from the present time. And
Mhm.
sometimes we're even talking about implications that what our present self thinks about that past.
Mhm.
And so gets a little dicey, you know? But yeah, not just verb tenses, although that's important, but is the reader following me from here to there? As in my mind, I tell about something that well, I think memory is a strange thing, and I think it changes.
I,
A
as a
lot.
person who's had to fact check a few things and then realize that a timeline thing was off. Do you know, like even I was just dealing with something like that today. A book I thought was about one type of cancer was actually a different type of cancer. My brain was very surprised by this. I'm like, oh, wow. And then another timeline, I thought a book had already been published and maybe I knew about it before it was out. I don't know. Memory is fascinating, especially in like medical and childhood and
It really is. And that's where, even though it's not a research paper, you know, the internet and archival research, even at the library, can be helpful. Um, you made me think about two instances. One, when I was doing a literary analysis last semester of a group of memoirs that I read, um, I wanted to compare it to a memoir I read in my childhood and like contrast it. And I looked the book up and it has a whole entirely different name that I remember. And the name included depression. And I was like, well, I read it probably when I was 10, so I had no idea that, you know, she was talking about depression, but it wasn't as much of a contrast as I was thinking it was going to be. But the other is a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was thinking back to a traumatic event that happened when I was 14 years old. And I wanted to write about something that happened the very next day. And so, while it was something that I sort of wanted to forget entirely, I came to this impasse where instead of forgetting, I wanted to be able to define what date did that happen. And it happened the day before my family and I had gone to a concert. It was in 1984. And so I Googled the performer's name and the Charlotte Coliseum, and I was able to find out the exact date. And from there, that just was like, well, what other things, like what songs are playing on the radio in 1984? And then I remembered that it was actually in November. So, like, that was right before an election. And just, it sent me down this spiral, that one tiny thing that I wanted to put into Google and find, that made that particular essay in my memoir so alive. It just helped me remember things going on when I was 14 that weren't the simple traumatic event.
I love that holistic 360 type of research. Do you know? Like
Mm.
people think that rabbit holes are bad, but I think that's the stuff of creativity. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
in theater, that's like dramaturgy. Do you know? It's like it is not only is it valuable, but it will give you gifts. I'm so glad I did all of the research that I had, because then when I had to cite things, I'm like, oh yeah, already it, as a creative, as a thought leader, as a
Mhm.
person who is a storyteller. I mean, this is for like professionals, this is important. But let's say you're someone that's like, oh, I don't know if I'm very good at writing, but I really want to work on this story, or I really want to work on being a better storyteller on paper, not just verbally. Is this the right class for them?
Yes. My mind wandered as you were talking, so I'm not sure that I got what your question actually was.
Hmm.
Um, so I'll just tell you where my mind went. Just this weekend, a friend of a friend, um, friended me on Facebook, and it's a gentleman who knew that I was writing because the friend suggested me, and I don't know. We're gonna chat this week, but he looks like by his pictures, he's maybe in his 60s. And he calls himself like a hobo and has had all these adventures when he's traveling around. And he sent me these photos of like tons of photographs and souvenirs and writings from his travels. And he wants to put them all together and compile it into his story. Now, I don't know if he wants to try to get it published, to make money, or if he has children or grandchildren he wants to leave it to. When I was in my early 20s, I started writing what I said was going to be my spiritual autobiography, which is bleeping hilarious that a young 20-year old person thinks that they, have an autobiography already, but I wanted to write it down in case I had children. And I
Yes.
wasn't even dreaming about getting married or having children. Um, but I think that there's something in all of us that wants to know our legacy or what our legacy might be, whether we have family by blood or whether we have friends or younger friends, um, to know this is what I value and this is why.
Mhm,
And it's important to me. And I think that it would be important to the people that care about me.
mhm,
Um, I think the workshop is for people like that.
mhm,
And I don't think people like that necessarily consider themselves creative
mhm.
or writers. Now, I think that everyone is creative
Same.
in some way,
Yep.
but there are lots of women out there who are still little girls at heart and
Yep.
just want to keep a diary
Yep.
or journal or their own private blog is what I call it. Um, I think that people have been doing that since the beginning of time,
Mhm.
and they've been doing it first and foremost for themselves.
Agreed. Do you know the quote, anonymous was a woman?
I don't, but that makes total sense.
I know. So all these quotes that are anonymous, a part of what the What She Said project wants to do. Oh, are we having some lag time? I think we're still in real time. A part of what we want to do is help folks, female identified folks, clarify their story and give them the skills and confidence in a safe and brave way to tell their stories, even if it's just to themselves, because that alone is powerful. And as it's like in this brave gym of making the unseen seen, maybe on paper, maybe in a verbal storytelling, maybe in your work, these things ripple out.
Yeah.
They ripple out and we might end up publishing like you and I are doing. I would have never thought I would have a memoir. I'm still a little shocked that this is happening. And there are people like you that go to school and refine. You have all, I'm so glad you're joining us because not only do you have the heart for this, but the way you hold feedback is really mindful and important. And that's important to the What She Said project. We women get pummeled with feedback all the time. And a lot of it is non-consensual. And so in this course, not only is it consensual, but you have the expertise, the lived experience to know how to navigate those moments so that the students and the participants gain from it and are not torn down like they might have experienced before. So I think of it like an incubator. Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That silence it is something that we have been silenced. And boys and men have been silenced too. I'm not gonna say they haven't, but I do think that we have in ways that are unique
Yes. And that's
from
why,
them.
yep,
And
that's why we,
I'm just gonna throw out my first prompt that I have planned for the first one because I want people to see how simple this is. And
oh
it's
yes.
Monday. We're doing this on Monday, which we're gonna be meeting on Monday night. And I had planned for my first prompt to be, could you think about today and the weekend? So you have 3 days to think about it. Think of a time over the past 3 days when you have not said something that you wanted to say. It could be in the car because you had road rage, to the person you're mad at. It could be to someone you love. Because we've been talking about traumas and stuff, but I'm going to tell you, like, we need to write about beautiful things too. So maybe in the last 3 days, you haven't spoken your mind in the grocery store or the gas station. Maybe you didn't speak your mind at church. Maybe you held your tongue when you dropped your son off to college, like I did Saturday, and you wanted to say something loving. What can be as little teensiest thing you think or something that seems huge. And I want us to just start, that will be the prompt. You just start scribbling it down because our prompts are to free our brain and to free our wrists to start moving. But I guarantee you there's been a lot of times just in the past 3 days that I held my tongue. And some of the time I ought to have. And those are worthy of writing about too. But some of the times I would have been better off if I had said what I needed to say.
You know what I've found?
Mm.
That my writing practice is connected to the part of me that's brave and kind. And so it helps me like metabolize my behavior in the world and I'm not like none of us are perfect human beings, but it reminds me, especially like a value centered,
Mhm.
as a valued centered person, I want to be aligned with my behavior. And so my writing practice has helped me examine. And
Mhm.
as I've written more and more from a loving perspective and
Yeah.
from a grounded perspective, myself and others.
Well, when you were saying that, and I like how you were describing it with your hands. I don't know if people are listening or watching, but writing sometimes is a powerful form of meditation. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, I think that meditation does not always happen still. I think that it can happen when, and
Mhm.
I do this, to show writing.
Describe what you're
More
doing.
often when I'm writing, I'm doing this, the keyboard fingers, but I feel more in touch with myself with
Yep.
first drafts or stream of consciousness, doing morning pages like Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way. I I feel more free when I'm using that pen, or some people even say use a pencil because it's even closer to the lead in real nature, you know?
Mhm.
But it's maybe someone would want to workshop with us simply to give themselves the gift of time to meditate.
Every time I sign up for a class, every time. And I have stayed in a writing, some sort of writing something for, I guess, oh, probably a decade now. I
Mm,
just sort of, I know me, and I don't know about you, but I'll get really busy, on my own business. So I'm like working with my clients and I'm caring about other people. I have a partner, I have family members, I have these parts of my life, I have my community. And if I don't put something on the calendar,
mm.
even for
Yeah.
me, it's rare it gets done.
Yeah, when we leave our chat just now, the next thing I'll do today is for 2 hours, I'll be on a Zoom with the writing cohort that I'm in. There are 5 or 6 of us, and it's led by my first mentor. I'm gonna drop her name, Beverly D'Onofrio. Um, she's 20 years older, I think, than me. And she has written several books, several memoirs. But yeah, I just want to say that I am not offering something that I'm not also doing myself, if that makes sense. Um, and I've also paid more for this workshop um than our workshop is going to cost. I hadn't really thought about that. But I hate talking about money, but
I love
we put money down for things that we value. And first of all, I value myself. Um and I value my craft. Um and I value other people, who are worthy to give me something that I don't yet have. So it isn't just that I went to school, that I'll be finishing up. Like taking writing courses and doing workshops in community is going to be something that I never give up. I'm
it.
always going to be doing.
And this would be, I think, for folks, because I know you pretty well. I would say for folks that are like writing curious, and they're like, oh, I really wanted to write this
Mhm.
year. Maybe they're like aiming for November to do something, whether it's like the month is important or like the election. This is a really great warm up for this. It's also a great entry point into our community at the lowest cost point we could think of to both hold that space for you and to support the needs of the course. So, really, I think also if you have work that you've been working on, I have a bird essay book. I'm going to have it with me, near me, because there are a few essays that are really strong in it. There's others that are a little eh. So it would be a good time to be working on that in community. And so I will be there with you to support Melanie, to hold that space well. But really, Melanie is our beloved educator and facilitator. And I wanted you to meet her if you hadn't before. So, Melanie, is there anything else you wanted to tell folks? Oh, they can follow you at Melanie McGehee Writer or your personal page.
Yeah, I would say melaniemcgehee.substack.com. I started it maybe in February, and so I just try to have one monthly newsletter. But yeah, Facebook is at Melanie Writing.
That's so cute. I love that. Not Instagram.
I am on Instagram. It's just personal, but I think it is not a private thing. So Melanie McGehee. I think I'm the only Melanie McGehee on there.
Yeah, I think so too.
Although there are some other M McGehees out there. I think at least one other Melanie McGehee is working in the academic venue that is not me. One day I'll meet her.
Is there anything else you want folks to know about you as they make their decisions on how they spend their time and resources for their creativity?
Hmm. Anything else they want to know about me?
Yeah, is there anything else you want them to know?
And think they might think it fun to know that my favorite author is Kate DiCamillo.
Oh,
who has written tons of children's books. My favorite books of hers are her middle grade novels. And so, yes, I do like fiction, even though creative nonfiction is my forte. And I love me some children's picture books. I
I
might,
didn't know that.
I might even use one or two as some examples. Who knows?
I also know that you are supremely generous with your attention and your kindness. And I am already, because I get a back seat view, I get to like see behind the curtains into your curriculum. It's so good. It's so good. I wish I could have started with you, but now I get to run this leg of the race with you. Mhm.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And we'll see you soon.
Yep. Thanks.